Welcome to another episode of Science Like Me Plus. I am Mikhail Belkin. I am a data science professor at UC San Diego. Joining me today is Yaron Singer. Yaron is a vice president of AI and security at Cisco. He co-founded and was the CEO of Robust Intelligence, which has recently been acquired by Cisco. Before that, he was a professor of computer science at Harvard University and has worked extensively on theoretical aspects of computer science, in particular on optimization. After completing his PhD at UC Berkeley, Yaron joined Google as a research scientist before joining Harvard as faculty. Yaron has been an academic and industry researcher, a co-founder of an AI startup, and now a senior manager at a major tech company. I am excited to have a chance to discuss with him the current state of affairs in industry and academia and learn from his insights and perspective. Welcome, Yaron.
Thanks, Misha.
So let's start with your background. You are an Israel-born computer scientist and academic who has also ventured into entrepreneurship. Can you tell us about your intellectual influences? What made you interested in science and in computer science in particular?
That's a good question. So maybe I should start by admitting that, my intellectual influences probably go back to my parents. So my dad is a double E professor at Tel Aviv University. My mom was a physicist. And she got her PhD, and then kind of worked in, as a researcher, and then later on as an executive, as a research executive. So I think I kind of they probably had a big part of influencing the trajectory, I think. So I think that probably played a part, in kind of my inclinations. So somehow that was always kind of in the background in the house, whether you liked it or not. So I grew up I grew up kind of not really thinking that I'll become a scientist. I thought I'll probably do something else. Maybe it's you see your parents, you kind of think, okay, I'm gonna do the whatever not of what they do. But yeah, I think kind of over time, I think I did find myself, with that kind of inclination. So I'd say probably my parents have been, the biggest influence on me. So.
And why specifically in computer science did something sort of nudged you in that direction?
Yeah. So maybe there are some degrees of freedom, between double E or physics or. I think it was, it's interesting. I think when I go back to thinking about computer science, I remember thinking that. One thing that I'm realizing is that I actually had a pretty good understanding of what computer science or theoretical computer science is. I think even before studying it, and to be honest, I don't know how exactly, but I sort of realized that it was that it had to do with algorithms and kind of, and at the same time it kind of it had something where you would. It had a sense of it did have a sense of an engineering component to it, and there's sort of kind of this intellectual curiosity aspect of it, and I figured, and I somehow understood kind of the discrete kind of nature of the mathematics behind it, and to me that was appealing. So kind of somehow being able to think of systems and design algorithms for these systems that. And then kind of that have mathematical depth to them, and at the same time you can somehow influence how these systems are being created or engineered, which is is a little bit more kind of engineering leaning than standard mathematics, I think. Then all those somehow very much appeal to me. So that kind of made me know that I want to study computer science. In undergrad.
So it's some sort of combination of mathematical depth and being able to do something which has some sort of that you can somehow feel or see.
Yeah, I think so. And like, I don't know how exactly I understood that. You know, because a lot of times you talk to, you know, when you talk to people about computer science, you know, people have a different perspective about what computer science is. I mean, a lot of people think of, you know, naturally think of computer science as being about programming, which, you know, some of it is, but, you know, but that's definitely not all of it, especially not kind of looking like more into the, you know, when you think more about the foundations, whether machine learning, theoretical computer science. And yeah, I don't know kind of like how I had that intuition. You know, probably growing up in Israel had to do something with it. It's probably in the air, in the water, or what have you. But you know, but I think kind of like, you know, I did some, you know, very, you know, programming, like kind of, you know, and I remember kind of like in school, or, you know, so, and somehow like that, I don't know, somehow like I feel like that was kind of like understood to me that there's like an entire science and kind of like a, you know, and mathematical depth behind all this. So, yeah.
And sort of to follow up on this, you worked a lot on optimization, and which is, you know, how do you maximize or minimize certain quantities that we care about. What particularly made it interesting for you? What attracted you to that?
Yeah, so, yeah, I feel like, well, maybe I feel like this is something that probably every optimization person says. Everything is optimization, right? And everything is like, you know, like life is optimization, or, you know, like you know, like all you do is you try to maximize things or minimize things, and, you know, and but, you know, yeah. So honestly, and maybe I'm like one of, you know, maybe I'm a little bit like these, like kind of these optimization people, where, you know, to me, yeah, I feel like it kind of struck the, you know, to me it just kind of like struck the fundamental questions that I was interested in. Like, you know, I was interested in, I was interested in kind of like understanding what can or cannot be done with, you know, in many cases, the questions were about limited information, like, you know, both in grad school and then later on kind of like, you know, during my time at Harvard. And kind of, so kind of like from, I think from kind of applied math or theoretical computer science perspective, these questions of like what can or cannot be done, what do we can or cannot do, they always boil down to optimization. And then, so you use these sort of models to kind of, you know, to ask these questions, like what are the limits of computation? What are the limits of, you know, the things that we could do? And you can, and kind of optimization gives you a very good framework to kind of ask these questions.
In sort of in a related question, how do you think, so we have this very nice theoretical questions, in particular the frameworks for optimization. How do you sort of use this trade-off between, you know, you have this very rigorous proofs and clean modeling assumptions, and then we have this, you know, very messy, like real-world data, and, you know, who knows what happens, especially now with this like super complexity. How do you view this trade-off?
Yeah.
Or is it a trade-off, maybe?
No, I mean, there is, yeah, I think that there's always like, that's a great question. I think, I mean, there is always that trade-off, and I think it kind of goes back to kind of like the art of modeling, right? So, and we can look kind of at our maybe our distant cousins in physics, right? And you know, like in physics, everything is a ball, everything is a sphere, right? Everything is you know, and obviously the world is not like the world is not always in the shape of a ball or you know, or you know, a sphere or what have you. But somehow I think the, you know, the good ones and the great ones, they manage to kind of create a model that basically distills a lot of the, I think, you know, kind of like the essence of what it is that you're trying to capture. So I think there's always complexity, and I think kind of the world that we're dealing with, like, data, I think it's to me it's very similar to physics. I feel like it's like kind of we're dealing a little bit with kind of like the the physics or the mathematics of information, and I feel like it does kind of like follow these the same laws as the kind of like the physical world or the physical universe, and it does have the complexity, and but like you can never model if you're kind of like, you can never capture the kind of the model in its full complexity. So I think it's like the idea is that if you're able to kind of create like a model that is ideally elegant and is simple enough so that you can work with and do something that is meaningful, and then have your kind of like have that model, if you've done a good job if you're somehow like if you manage to the results that you show in that model somehow translate into the results of the real world. You've either you've taken this model and you've designed an algorithm, and that algorithm that works on this model later on has works or has promise in the real world, or vice versa. You basically kind of created a model and showed maybe like an impossibility result, or showed some sort of hardness where that hardness is somehow also reflected in in the real world, and you're somehow able to point to the maybe some of the reason for why that hardness exists. So that's kind of that's how I think about this aspect of modeling.
Yeah, that's actually one thing which always amazed me about physics, right? You think about the planet as being a point, right? The planet, it's not a point. It's very far from a point, but this is somehow extremely useful, right? It's kind of the power of that is just amazing.
That's right.
It's I sort of maybe for particularly for students, both undergraduate and graduate who may be watching us. What do you think about the publication models that we have now? It's okay, slight change of subject. Like, it seems that on one side, like we have this conference system which is almost kind of out of balance, right? We have like tens of thousands of submissions. It's a crazy pace. On the other hand, well, it seems that the pace of development of this technology is kind of maybe necessitate that. I don't know. Like, how do you think about it, both from your point of view as an academic and kind of an industry person?
I mean, I'm smiling because those are exactly the kind of questions or dilemmas that I definitely was struggling with that as an academic, and now I'm publishing less, so I'm kind of it's something that I stress about less or think about less, but it's definitely still top of mind for me. I think that honestly, I think that the peer review publication system that we have just doesn't scale. And I think that it was just not designed for the way that that we're using it right now. I think that my guess is that and I didn't live in those times, but I'm assuming that back in maybe in the 1920s, 1930s, when you had 10 people in your community and who kind of who worked in like kind of different institutions like in the world, and this is kind of like the and then this is like obviously before the days of internet and what have you. This is like a good way to communicate, and also kind of like a scalable way to kind of validate results and what have you. And now I think that the world changed dramatically, and kind of in all these different ways. One of them is the fact that the community, like the academic community that is interested in publishing, is very large. but also the means for communication and kind of the rate of change and progress, again, like kind of changed dramatically. So I don't know that system, the peer review publication system that we have is kind of like scales, to kind of, or it was the right one for kind of like what we're doing, to be honest. So, so that's my opinion. I don't, yeah.
Any thoughts on how it should, what it should be like?
Maybe that's a topic for a longer conversation. I think that I think that ultimately it's about what it is that that we're seeking to, I think like as a person of optimization, like what is it that we're trying to optimize? Are we trying to optimize progress? Are we trying to optimize like kind of development? Are we trying to kind of like have a kind of a concentrated talent of experts sitting in an ivory tower? I think kind of like depending on what it is that we're trying to like optimize or preserve, then I think that there are like kind of different methods that are the right ones to apply. So for example, like, do I think that the number of publications or citations that someone has, does that mean that they're like, does that, is that a necessarily a great measure for like, how good they'll be as a faculty member? I personally don't, right? But and at the same time, like and maybe it's also like kind of not a great measure of like, how great of an AI developer they are, right? So yeah, I think that like depending on what it is that we're trying to do, I think that like we should kind of like consider different approaches.
Yeah, I've been kind of going back and forth myself on this. On one hand, it seems, like you say, it seems that the system is kind of fundamentally broken. On the other hand, well, the progress has been like nothing short of miraculous, so I don't know, maybe it's working, I don't know.
I mean, I think that the question is like, well, on that I'll ask like kind of, I agree that the progress is phenomenal. But number one, we have to ask ourselves like, is like how much of the progress is due to the publication system, or is the publication system like, an artifact, or at best of this progress, right? Right. And again, in addition, like, it is like, what is it that we want to, the question again, like kind of comes back to like, what is it that we're trying to optimize, right? With this system, are we trying to optimize the progress for the AI industry? Or are we trying to, kind of like, or are we trying to optimize for, intellectual rigor? Who knows, right?
Do you think, okay, well, that being said, do you think there is a point of trying to keep track of sort of the most recent, the best and newest stuff, or is it maybe not worth it? Or if it's worth it, then any sort of ideas, given the volume, how to?
I think it's again, like I think that it is I think that it's tough. Like what I see is that somehow, right, the good ideas surface in this world, like, and I don't know that it's necessarily surfaced through the fact that they're accepted to like kind of one publication, like kind of one conference or another. Publishing your idea right now is essentially free. Anybody can like put it on the archive. So I think that it's just like implicitly there's some sort of like kind of there is some kind of kind of like experts process, right, that's happening where somehow like kind of the I feel like kind of the the breakthrough ideas, or the kind of like the good ideas, kind of they surface. What I do find is that I guess students, and also kind of like now kind of like employees need to be like a little bit educated about about the now kind of like I'd say like maybe the value of papers, or so I think kind of one thing that you find is that as an academics, you kind of know that there are that there are people that they're very have like kind of strong reputation, and you sort of like you follow their work, or they're like kind of where you kind of like have a sense of like when things are going to be reproducible, when things are not going to be reproducible. You kind of like you develop I think some intuition on kind of like what sort of work one can trust. What you find is that like that's a skill that that you've kind of trained internally like for a good number of years, but now kind of like folks in a research lab that don't have kind of like that academic training, or or students, to them like any paper on the archives looks like a serious paper, and that's kind of when when you have to guide them a little bit on on knowing not to be surprised that maybe some things are not exactly reproducible, knowing that sometimes like there are kind of like claims that are not really valid, or and that's important, because like people you don't want people kind of like going on like in kind of like in directions that you don't think will bear fruit.
So you maybe develop some sort of sense of what's important and what's, or at least what can be trusted.
I think so. I think like I think that any good academic should have a sense of like what is important, what will be important. But then I think kind of and then in addition to that, I think you also need to have like that skill of like you should have intuition about what is kind of like about what is quality work and what isn't. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't have been here, right? We would have spent all our time like trying to read 10,000 like NeurIP submissions, right? So
it's, that's a problem.
Yeah.
So maybe a sort of different question. Like now, so you were in academia for quite some time, and recently you went full time to industry. Do you see yourself going back to academia, or you think you'll sort of for the foreseeable future you will stay?
One never knows, right? So like my dad is 82, and he just kind of finished writing like a new paper about something completely new, which is very interesting, and then he's now kind of writing the follow papers. So I definitely see that as as a role model. So I can definitely see myself also going back to academia, and in general, just sort of like working on research and doing that. So I've been a little bit more kind of like in the running a company in the past few years, which kind of like that requires like a kind of flexing different muscles. But like I hope that my research skills are still intact, and that I can exercise them more in the coming years. So yeah.
So now I have to ask you, about AI. How can we avoid talking about that, right? So as AI becomes increasingly integrated into the economy, what do you think are the tasks and skills which are sort of next in line for automation, or the opposite? Is it like what should we tell our students they should learn to stay relevant?
Okay, so those are two interesting questions. I think that candidly, like, and maybe this is a bad answer, but I think that you know, the answer is like AI. I feel like AI is going to be integrated everywhere. I look at like, I do feel like right now we have generally, you know, I'm for anybody who knows me from you know, either as an academic or as a, you know, CEO or as an executive, knows that I'm you know, typically like skeptical, sometimes cynical. But I do have to say that you know, in this case, I genuinely believe that the technology that we have today, right now, the capabilities are they are transformative, and they will transform like every aspect of our lives. So when I think about where AI is going to be integrated in business, I cannot think of a single vertical of business where AI is not going to have, you know, is not going to, you know, basically disrupt like an entire industry, because I do believe that we've reached that level of automation where every vertical can, you know, just can make phenomenal progress. You know, I look at like kind of, you know, the space that, you know, that I find myself in, which is, you know, obviously AI, but then also cybersecurity. I feel like there is just like massive disruption there. But I know kind of like of other fields that I've, you know, touched and I'm aware of, like every other aspect, you know, can be and will be, you know, disrupted, you know, fundamentally. So when it comes to like kind of what people should study,
Anything left for us?
Anything left for us? I think everything is left for us. I think it's, you know, like, you know, for computer scientists, I think this is like, you know, a lot of it is like, you know, it's, you know, so there's a lot of automation, but there's also like kind of a great demand for obviously for great ideas and ingenuity, and kind of like, and also like a need to like understand always a need for understanding the fundamentals and like kind of and I think kind of like rigorous thinking. I guess, you know, kind of like my recommendation, just, you know, for students, like I think as it always has been, it's emphasis on the fundamentals and the foundations, because you know, like especially when you see kind of the rate of change, you know, moving so quickly, right? You know, like the learning how to be like an AI engineer, you know, today is very different from what it's going to be like 3 months from now, and 6 months from now, and a year from now. So, but I kind of, you know, I give my dad as an example earlier. My dad had a 60-something year career, you know, and everything that he learned back in undergrad, you know, he's still using that. He's still, you know, so, and obviously, you know, technology evolved dramatically, and you know, and the world has gone through a lot. But those fundamentals, those like kind of strong foundations, allow him to like keep on learning and keep on like evolving, developing, doing new things. So that's the best advice that I could give to people. Like kind of like learn the fundamentals, learn the foundations, especially in undergrad, because like I feel like that's the, you know, it's not the only chance you'll get, but it's definitely the best one. So
it's a great role model, your dad. It's really impressive.
yeah.
I kind of think that in a sense, chasing the latest technology is kind of a never-ending thing, right? It's like you have to, I mean, I agree with you, you have to have some sort of basis for like thinking about things. Otherwise, it's just, it's changing every month now.
Yeah. And I have to say that like I see that in industry, you kind of you see that a lot, and you know, this is something that we try to instill in everybody who's been, you know, working at, you know, at our company at Robust Intelligence, but then now kind of like also like our team, like you know, our team at you know, at Cisco. there's something about, you're not going to teach them, or I'm not going to teach them, analysis or calculus or, or whatever. But there is something about thinking, basically thinking in frameworks and kind of like, and having that kind of, and kind of thinking like a little bit more rigorously about something, right? So rather than just sort of like thinking of, of pouring out code on something, you really want to like people to sort of understand that, okay, there's a, there's a model here, there's a framework, and we're going to treat, this as, as this building block, and then we're going to apply kind of like an algorithm here, and for people to kind of like understand that framework is really, really important, and that really kind of allows them to make a lot of progress. So the more that we instill that kind of disciplinary thinking in education, before undergrad, during undergrad, I think that people will benefit tremendously from that as they go into industry.
Do you think anything can slow down the AI processes development? Maybe, I don't know, it could be regulatory, it could be social. Any bottlenecks that you can see there? Or it's just like
I think that they're like, well, my opinion here is as good as anyone's, but like I think that there are like obviously like kind of geopolitical tensions that that can arise, that can like kind of we can expect like maybe a slowdown, and and maybe it could be like chip manufacturing or what have you. Regulatory, like fortunately or unfortunately, like depending on which side the fence you're on, I don't historically, like with kind of like with technology, like you don't really see regulatory being a real showstopper. So I don't see that.
Nuclear is a counterexample.
Nuclear, well, the other powers at play there, but I think that the things that could happen, like we could see kind of like change in the economic conditions, right? All of a sudden, there's DeepSeek 2 that's going to come out, and NVIDIA is going to lose like I don't know, like more trillions, or the whole stock market is going to lose more trillions, and investors could be less bullish about AI, and now we're going to like be a little bit in a there's going to be a little bit of a cool down. So all those things I can it's the geopolitical tensions, the kind of like economic downturns for various reasons, like all those I can those feel very real, and I can very see them happening somewhere along the way. But generally speaking, I think that directionally, so directionally, like I just think that we're going to continue on, just making this like unbelievable, just incredible progress. So there could be like somewhere in the future there could be like 6 months or a year or maybe a couple of years, a few years of like maybe some sort of slowdowns, but directionally I just sort of like if you look at like where we're going to be 20 years from now, 30 years from now, 40 years from now, we'll just continue on seeing like a very strong trajectory of progress.
So more just keep pushing forward.
I think so. By the way, like if we sort of look at this like like if we kind of like open the kind of like the window on this, like thinking about this from a longer time horizon perspective, we can start thinking about the development of AI all the way back to Turing, right? And kind of because like that has been like kind of very much the driver of computer science, kind of like it's not only building kind of computerized systems, but actually building intelligent systems. So looking at this of like kind of how much I think we started making like this sort of like this serious investment and quest into like building intelligent systems starting from the 50s, right? Turing, von Neumann. Then it's like when you look at it from that perspective, over the past now, what is it, 75 years, it's just tremendous progress, and then just going to continue.
Actually, Turing, interestingly enough, predicted that we will have systems which can pass the Turing test by year 2000. Not a bad prediction, a little bit off, but not that much.
You know, like, yeah, I mean, and I have to say that, like, one of the things that, like, for me personally has been astonishing is that if you'd asked me 5 years ago whether we'll pass the Turing test in our lifetime, my answer would have been no. To me, it just seemed like something that was just like insurmountable. And you know, 5 years ago, I think that was still after BERT, right? And whatnot. And I still didn't see it. So I think it's amazing.
Yeah, I have to say I haven't seen the writing on the wall either until basically ChatGPT came out. That was kind of, maybe I'll ask you another question about the startup, Robust Intelligent, that you co-founded. How did you, what sort of induced you to start a startup, and how did you think about it? And did you think, did you plan it to be a kind of a big thing, or you thought it was like a, you know, a small side venture and which kind of grew? What was your trajectory in this?
Yeah, I mean, so let's see. So I think that I was very much interested in and understanding the vulnerabilities, right, of AI. You know, kind of like the vulnerability of AI, the sensitivity of it, what have you, and then understanding like how to overcome it. And kind of like during my time in academia, like I wrote some papers on it, and then we also kind of like created a we initiated a kind of like a large grant with a project with universities. So it was very interesting to me, and I kind of like very much wanted this. You know, I was very interested in this kind of like in this as a project, and I actually kind of like wanted to like really. I wanted to really do this. I wanted to do like kind of, to build something and kind of like see that something get adopted in the real world. And I think that it felt to me that probably the only way to do it is actually to start a company, because you're sort of like I think kind of once you want to have something that is like, once you want to have something that's actually like adopted, a framework that is actually adopted in, kind of like in the real world, then I feel like that's when you sort of like, you need to cross over from academia, whereas you kind of like, I think kind of the major effort is the intellectualizing about it. And then I feel like kind of the implementation aspect or the adoption aspect probably is best, like the industry is just like kind of most suitable. So so that's kind of like what led us, I think, to kind of like venture off into kind of like doing company. So yeah, I think it's been an interesting ride. Yeah.
So let me maybe ask you now. What sort of books, podcasts, or anything interesting outside of like your direct area, outside of maybe directly computer science, that sort of have captured your interest or imagination recently? Anything you would recommend?
I'm very interested in kind of just what's going on in in the world in general. So I'm an avid reader of The Economist. For years I never. It's only when I'm on vacation I can actually read it cover to cover. So, but I always want to. But I am. But I do kind of like I do read The Economist on a regular basis. Some. Some kind of like business publications as well, and then, like I obviously kind of like just keep up with. With everything that's happening in kind of like in the I think kind of like in the AI world, and every so not as often as I used to, but like I kind of now kind of like when there is like kind of a paper or something like that is, or like a lecture about like, some technology that I think is actually very interesting. So I kind of like, I do get into that, deeply. And then otherwise, I'm interested a lot in, kind of history and kind of politics. So I'm originally from Israel, so I'm interested in kind of like, everything kind of that's going on in, in that region and that relates to that. So that's kind of, those are the kinds of things I do.
Anything particularly exciting in AI area? Good or bad? Maybe we die or we live. I don't know.
Anything that's exciting in the AI area? Well, I mean, like whatever I'm going to say now is probably going to become obsolete by the time that that this comes out.
That will be interesting too.
I'm interested a lot in. I'm interested, now I'm like, I'm very biased with the things that I'm interested in. I'm a little bit more interested in engineering. I'm actually very interested in so Anthropic released this framework called MCP, which is basically kind of like a protocol for, it's a very useful protocol, that helps build agentic systems. And I think that's something that's like, that I've been kind of like, digging into. So, it's more engineering than it is something that is like some sort of like masterful proof or like an amazing algorithm or like kind of a transformers like breakthrough. But it's something that, like for us, is actually kind of like really, really important. So that's something that I'm actually very interested in, and basically kind of basically protocols that allow us to bring in to basically kind of like bring in data like kind of live into an agentic system. That's a capability that right now, like without a protocol like that, we don't have that. That's something I am like interested in. So that's kind of a recent thing that I've been looking into.
Maybe we can recommend to our students that they learn MCP.
Oh, please, yeah. If they, and then come tell us about it, because we're very interested. So yeah.
Well, thank you for your time and insight today, Yaron. Real pleasure talking with you. And thank you for joining us on another episode of Science Like Me Plus.